Hello everybody, you've probably already heard by now, 2026 is coming here to Canada. That's right, the FIFA Men's World Cup. The schedule is out. 7 games in the beautiful city of Vancouver, British Columbia, 6 games in Toronto, Ontario. So what else do we know? Let's do a deep dive at some of the things that we found out in the schedule launch. For me, the biggest story is without doubt, Canada has been given a large runway by FIFA in presenting them as a chance as co-hosts to stay in Vancouver beyond the group stage. Now we know they will play the second game in the group stage, the third game. The winner of that group will play in Vancouver in the last 32, and the winner of that game will then play in Vancouver in the last 16, presenting the hosts with an amazing chance to get through to the quarterfinal by playing 4 straight games in the same city. Okay, so let's talk about the knockout stages. On July the 2nd, the same day Toronto and Vancouver host the last 32 game. That is important. Why? Because it presents Canada with a backup to still play a knockout game in the last 32 within Canada. I would expect that Toronto knockout game to feature a team that could finish second in Canada's group. It also presents an opportunity for Toronto and Vancouver to get full stadiums on the same day, July the 2nd, and there's 3 games being played that day. Toronto, LA, and Vancouver. I would expect FIFA to schedule it in that order. Why? They want to fill stadiums and allow people to go to one non-Canada game while getting back to watch Canada play later, hopefully in Vancouver as the group winners. Now, Toronto starts Canada's World Cup campaign on day 2, the 3rd World Cup match. What does that mean? Likely Canada will be in Group B or C as seeded team in that group. That is important. The US also start the World Cup on that day, later in LA. So what does that mean? On the Friday in Toronto, I would guess a 7 o'clock Eastern start before going out to play in the West Coast for the United States World Cup opener. The second game for Canada is on the following Thursday. Great news that it's in Vancouver. Why? Because they avoid playing an early Eastern time kickoff. Why is this important? 4 games are played that day in the World Cup. Atlanta, Guadalajara, Vancouver, and LA all host games on that day. Now we avoid Canada playing in an area like Toronto where they would play maybe earlier in the day. Now we can get everybody on board for engagement and awareness of the game by playing out on the West Coast at a time when the entire nation can see it. Very important. The following 3rd game will be on the Wednesday, June the 24th. Now, Vancouver are matched up with Seattle that day. That is also important. This is a day when 3 groups are all wrapped up at the same time in Atlanta and Miami, Mexico City and Monterrey, and Vancouver and Seattle. So expect it to be later in the day, either a 4 o'clock or a 7 o'clock Pacific time kickoff on Wednesday, June the 24th. Ironically, Lionel Messi's 39th birthday. We'll see whether he's playing in the World Cup that day. A couple of other things to note. We now know at least 8 World Cup games will take place in Canada without Canada playing in them. What do we know about these days? Well, Vancouver's first non-Canada World Cup day comes on day 3. Toronto's on day 7. The importance of this is both those games feature teams who kick off their World Cups. That is so exciting for that city and for those countries to gain momentum and storylines around starting their World Cup in Canada. So for example, on day 3, on match day 6 in Vancouver, 2 teams will kick off the World Cup, and later on day 7, 2 more teams will start their World Cup campaign in Toronto, adding to the other 2 who will play in Canada's first game. Very important for storylines and awareness of Canada. And finally, let's end where we started. Should Canada win the group, they will get a rest of 8 days, an unprecedented number in World Cup history, to get to playing in Vancouver again in the last 32. FIFA have really handed them a present there. Should they win that day, they will then get further rest by playing in the final last 16 day, which will come in Vancouver again. More rest, and that is important. Why? If Canada win the group, it keeps the awareness going and they stay in the tournament longer rather than getting knocked out maybe earlier in the last 16. They can get pushed all the way to the last day in the last 16. This means they're always going to be in a cycle to play later on in the tournament. Do we want to get too far ahead of ourselves? Why not? If they win in Vancouver on the last 16 as group winners, expect a quarterfinal either in Kansas City or Miami. So we look forward to it. It's going to be fantastic. Time now for the hard work to begin. Canada 2026, we're only 2 years away.